The King has said there is a vital need for mutual understanding among religions in times of international turmoil and heartbreaking loss of life as the violent conflict in Israel continues. In a landmark speech, King Charles urged people to be passionate but not pugnacious when debating, saying the temptation to turn ourselves into a shouting society must be resisted.
One of my first acts as sovereign a little over a year ago was to open the doors of Buckingham Palace to the leaders of the major faiths represented across these islands, to welcome them with respect and indeed love, and to rededicate my life to protecting the space for faith itself within our shores. Such understanding, both at home and overseas, is never more vital than at times of international turmoil and heartbreaking loss of life.
His comments come as tensions here in the United Kingdom are rising. Last night, hundreds of people gathered outside Downing Street to pledge their support for Palestine. And last week, a number of Jewish schools in London were forced to close because of safety fears, amid warnings that anti-Semitic incidents in the UK have increased by over 500%. And joining me now in the studio, royal commentator Emily Andrews. Hi, Emily, good to see you. And Sarah Hewson, talkTV's royal editor. Good to see you both. So it is said, and I think you know, that the King wrote this speech himself, so we're assuming, Sarah, it was really from the heart.
Yes, it was, and this was a speech of real substance from the King, described as a State of the Nation speech. It was a voice of calm and reason, and, you know, never more has it been needed, never before has it been needed so much, really. That message, that plea for kindness, he talked about drawing from the deep wells of shared values, particularly of civility and tolerance. He talked about people having a willingness to listen to others, to respect those views, and where we disagree, we can do it with politeness. That he talked about the online space and the shouting narrative that we have fallen into. So it was a very wide-ranging speech, and he didn't mention Israel and Gaza by name, but it was very clear what he was talking about when he talked about international turmoil and heartbreaking loss.
Emily, how surprising was it that he should deliver a speech of this kind? Is it the sort of thing his mother, our late Queen, would have done? Is it the sort of thing we would expect from the King? Or did he go further than we would expect?
I don't think the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth, would have made a speech like this. I think she would have obliquely referenced the turmoil in the world, both obviously in the Middle East and here. But I don't think she would have gone as far as to say, as Charles did, about interfaith dialogue. One of the first things he did was bringing faith leaders into Buckingham Palace, his first act as king. When he was Prince of Wales, interfaith dialogue was one of the things he cared about, one of his passions. You know, the late Queen was a very religious woman, and her Church of England faith as head of the church was very important to her, and she would talk about her faith. With Charles, it is talking about all faiths. Every faith, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Sikhism, Jainism, is equally important. And he very much sees himself as a convener, bringing people together. And so what we saw in this speech, I think, is different from what his mother would have done. And he was asking for tolerance, obviously, both in this country and abroad. And when he wrote the speech, I think the bombing on the Al Ali hospital in Gaza probably hadn't happened. But the timing last night was very pertinent, because we saw in the bombing of that hospital in the south of Gaza City, immediately people jumping onto social media saying, oh, it's X, it's, you know, the Palestinians, oh, it's Israelis. And actually, as Charles said, and as we have seen play out, no one should jump to conclusions. No one should blame X or Y until we've paused, thought, and just considered, let's have an investigation, let's see. As he said, are we pausing before speaking or acting? And the answer is no.
Sarah, are we giving others the space to think and talk freely?
I mean, I think that every word he says really is a pearl. He's absolutely right. You know, we should be considerate of other people. Of course we should. We should be polite. We should listen to opinions that we might disagree with or think we disagree with. And who knows, we might be persuaded to change our minds. We might at least understand why other people think what they think. I mean, I reckon everything he said was worth saying and was jolly good, except that the way he was dressed, you know, in white tie with decorations at what looked like a glittering and magnificent dinner or whatever he was at, the idea of manners and politesse and, you know, being civil and being, you know, in the wake of a ghastly massacre, and in the same moment as people are, you know, storming outside Downing Street spewing hatred. And, you know, there are people in this country who are scared to go to school or go to synagogue, they're frightened of reprisals. The sorts of things, you know, that people are calling each other on social media are just absolutely abominations. It kind of looks as if he's absolutely right, but in a tiny little bubble of civility, miles away from where it's all really kicking off.
And I agree with you, and so many people have said, haven't they, well, I feel that this is wrong for me to be going and doing something that's normal. I mean, this isn't normal, this engagement that he was at. This was the Mansion House dinner hosted by the Lord Mayor of London, and it dates back to the 17th century, and monarchs would be invited in the year of their coronation to be received there and would give this speech, and that tradition. I think if these were the first words we'd heard from him, yes, that would be, I hear your point, but of course he did make that statement.
Yes, he did.
Last week.
He did,
and he was straight out there with those words.
What were you thinking, Emily? Because you look like you really
Well,
reacted
I
to
think a lot of people might have thought, you know, when Charles became king, was he going to be able to talk about the issues that he cared so deeply about? He's a very emotional man, very deeply feeling man. He was the longest serving Prince of Wales. He had said, I cannot do the job as monarch as I did as Prince of Wales. We almost knew too much what he thought as Prince of Wales, some people said. But I think in this speech, actually, he trod that line very carefully between giving us his thoughts and feelings, and quite passionately so, but also treading quite a presidential line. He didn't say anything that would offend anyone. What he was effectively calling for was, in essence, us all to be much nicer to each other.
Yes.
And actually, no one has really said that. And I think that Charles has obviously a huge platform. He's king not just of the United Kingdom, but, you know, 14 realms around the world. And people do listen to him. He has very good relationships with King Abdullah of Jordan. He has good relationships with many people in Qatar and Bahrain, in the Middle East. He has fostered those relationships over time. And perhaps behind the scenes, I don't think he would ever be able to say publicly, but perhaps he can be used as by the international community to try in that convening role, which he does do so well.
Yes, Sarah, do you think that it's possible that his words would make a difference? Because if they do, thank God for him, quite frankly.
I mean, let's be in no doubt he will be across every single detail of what is going on here. He has a deep understanding of the region. He is very passionate about it. He is extremely well read. We know that in his statement last week, he asked to be kept informed and across everything that is going on. He will be following this very, very closely. And as Emily said, while he can't speak out, while he can't be seen to be getting involved in the politics of things, there is a real power in that soft diplomacy of this man who has, you know, put so much emphasis on interfaith dialogue and peace. And when you look at the words that he used yesterday, actually they were very old-fashioned messages of kindness, of listening to others, willingness to put others first and treat them as we would wish to treat us. There was nothing radical in what he was saying. What's actually surprising is that we need reminding of these things. And I think that is why he raised the issue of the digital sphere, of artificial intelligence, and that fear of the ability to have a civilised debate and to disagree politely being lost.
Thank you both very much indeed. Good to see you both.